TCP and UDP protocols. Let's go a little bit further discussing TCP and UDP protocols and why they are so commonly used in networking today. So, we've learned earlier that IP is the moving truck or the mail truck that moves data across networks and across the internet. Now, we can send TCP and UDP over IP. And when we generally say we're sending something over IP, it's actually encapsulated by IP. As we learned in the previous lessons, the packet, if you break that packet down and look into that packet, you'll see that there was TCP data or it could be UDP data encapsulated in that packet. So when something's sent over IP, it's generally termed encapsulated by the IP protocol. So if IP is the moving truck or the mail truck, you may think, why use TCP or UDP? And why not just use IP? Because TCP and UDP has extra benefits that IP does not. One of those benefits is what's called multiplexing. TCP and UDP can simultaneously connect to several servers at once and communicate with them. It's almost like a multiplexing, multiple communication and connection streams to those servers. So that's why TCP and UDP would be the choice to send data over just over IP because of that benefit. IP is operating at the layer 4 layer. You may hear the OSI model layer or layer 4 of the transport layer. When you hear this what this means is IP operates at that level. We'll learn more about the 7 layers of the OSI model in later lessons. So let's dig down and find out what's the difference between TCP and UDP and what makes them different. So TCP is a connection oriented protocol. So what that means is TCP is a reliable connection protocol. When we use TCP, it's a reliable delivery. It acknowledges the connection. Also, it has built-in error recovery. So if there's a problem, it retransmit or it corrects the errors. So that's why it's known as a connection-oriented protocol. So it's again, the key benefits of TCP would be a reliable delivery. It recovers from errors and flow control. It controls how much data is sent. That's all built into that protocol, the TCP protocol. Now, as we look at UDP, UDP actually is a connectionless protocol. There's no acknowledgement and no error recovery. Data is just sent. It's called unreliable, meaning that there's delivered, but there's no acknowledgement of that delivery. The data packets are just sent. Also has no flow control. The sender determines the amount of the data that's being sent. So another analogy, if you can think about UDP, is just a one-way communication. You can just speak out or send information out in one direction, and that's UDP. Whereas TCP is a communication back and forth. So, why use UDP? Let's talk about UDP a little bit more. Okay, if it's connectionless and it has no error correction, no flow control, why use it? Because it's a real-time communication. It's delivered quickly and smoothly. It's a fast communication. Even though it's connectionless, there's protocols that use it that would not need to talk back or not need to acknowledge. Say, for instance, like if you boot up your laptop on a wireless network, you're going to connect to the access point and you're going to get an IP address. You get that IP address via DHCP. Um, DHCP does not need a response back. It's sending that information out. Other protocols that use UDP would be TFTP, which is the Trivial File Transfer Protocol, or DNS, Domain Name Service. All of those do not need an acknowledgement back. That's a protocol that just sent out. Real-time streaming protocol, the RTSP. That's video streaming. It does not need an acknowledgement back. So those are good uses for UDP. And again, with that connectionless protocol, it may be delivered, it may not. It's just sending out of the data. Again, whereas TCP is connection-oriented protocol, it has a return receipt. It has to acknowledge that delivery there. Protocols that use that would be the HTTPS or SSH. which is a secure shell connection to consoles and terminals. It handles error correction again, and it manages that process. So, in this lesson, we learned a little bit more about TCP and UDP and why you'd want to use those protocols. We learned about why TCP is called the connection oriented protocol and UDP is the connection less oriented protocol, and also the uses for TCP and UDP. Thank you very much for being a part of this lesson, and we will see you in future lessons.